The world is full of information. Every day, IBM reported in 2017, a reported estimatedly 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is outputted, and that doesn't account for the vast amount of relative information provided to the individual either. To handle such a heavy input load, the brain generalizes certain clumps of data into fragments. A stereotype constitutes as one such method of generalization. Evolutionary psychologists consider the xenophobic side of the human tendency to be a survival trait, assisting in the distinguishment between friend and foe. There are advantages, allowing for a rapid response to particular scenarios based on prior experiences or conceptions. And there are disadvantages, whereby these experiences and conceptions have developed into phobias or fetishes. This can lead to social categorization and prejudicial biases in actions. Prejudice is a negative and destructive cognitive perception, often passed through lineage, regurgitated from mouth to ear, from mouth to ear. Aside from masturbatorily stroking the group ego for a sense of superiority, a prejudice provides a platform by which to scapegoat another group in an attempt to make sense of current issues. This legitimizes and justifies later acts of discrimination, regardless of any lacking pragmatism or empirical certifiability. We've established how a stereotyped prejudicial concept, conclusive or not, can spin and distort until its borders are fuzzy. But to what end? Humanism, religion, and egotism all generally promote a paramount intrinsicality for us. But the truth of it is, we are animals, animalistically breaking as we build. We're imperfect creatures walking the walk of life. Prejudice is the stepping stone between stereotyping and discriminating. Many humans have crossed that vicious valley, misguided by the directing stranger and unaware of the bridge further up ahead. An obvious modern example of escalated prejudice would of course be the Holocaust and the attempt at genocide extermination against all unbelonging to the Aryan race. The Nazi Party targeted Jews and black people in particular, killing approximately 2/3 of the poor in Europe. But there are other, sometimes less extreme, sometimes more extreme, examples of mass scapegoating and discrimination. For instance, following the Pearl Harbor attacks, American masses refused to mingle with Japanese citizens, and during and after World War II it was common and accepted to avoid Germans on the basis that they, too, were likely a Nazi. When the Taliban were in charge of Afghanistan, women were not allowed to receive education, and they needed to conceal their faces in public. In Saudi Arabia, women were required to follow their male companion never aside. British women could not vote like a man until 1928 in Britain, and rape between spouses was determined impossible until 1992. In North Korea, millions die of starvation in the workers' paradise, courtesy of their great leaders' prejudicial values. The 1994 Rwandan massacre epitomized and exemplified how tribal prejudice friction can result in a short-lived but long-remembered killing parade. And the great leap forward of communist China in 1949 said of a slough of genocidal acts that killed dozens of millions of people. The cognitive bias that homosexuals are uniquely capable of acquiring immunodeficiency syndrome is still pervasively popular, and as is the misconception that autism is a result of child vaccinations. Institutional racism and apartheid, colorism and ageism, superiority and hate steering, stratification and ableism. The list could go on the length of 3 essays. Prejudice spirals further from truth. One could reason that surely a personality more prone to prejudice could exist, and one would be reasoning correctly. In theory. Hippocrates highlighted 4 main temperaments of the human personality, each metaphorically tied to bodily fluids or humours that humans exhibit. The bloody sanguine were considered optimistic and enthusiastic. The phlegmatic were deemed lethargic and cumbersome. The dirty bile melancholic exhibited depressive negative traits, and the yellow bile choleric, angry, volatile, and upset traits. This oversimplified physiological method of personality partitionment found itself popularized in the realm of post-enlightened academia via Lombrosian methodology and subsequently adopted by both Kretschmer and Sheldon among others. However, it wasn't until Freud that academics attempted to approach these dimensions of human personality with a genuine desire to understand. 20th century psychological thought had been massively influenced by Freud and type theory, sparking an incessant desire among many psychologists to identify correlatives and congruities between traits, to empirically delineate the seemingly infinite array of personalities that exist in the modern world. Thus, these people are called trait theorists. In 1936, Gordon Allport catalogued over 18,000 individual trait adjectives by scouring dictionaries over the course of almost half his life, suggesting that the average human to possess 7 central traits dominative in their behaviour. On a lesser level, secondary traits dwell emergent dependent on situation and disposition, and then finally he theorised the rare emergence of a trait that is capable of dominating both the central and secondary traits. He calls this the cardinal trait, which overshadows the others to become synonymous with the individual. He developed this hypothesis extensively, eventually simplifying it down to 4,000 words with the assistance of colleagues and fellow enthusiasts. In the 1940s, Raymond Cattell managed to reduce the voluminous list down to 16 basic and fundamental characteristics. This inspired a wave of new and alternative theories on personality traits, popularising scales such as Murray's system of needs and the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Hans Eysenck took all of this a step further, arguing personality to be measured on a paradigm consisting of only 3 cornerstone factors: psychoticism, intra-extroversion, and neuroticism. Now, in the 21st century, modern trait theorists believe personality to be measurable via Costa and McCree's Big Five model. This consists of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Following World War II, with anti-fascism abundant and fascinating, the psychoanalyst Theodor Adorno in 1950 devised a scale measuring fascist traits to determine the probability of an authoritarian personality. Such a personality exhibited features including conventionalism, political aggression, in-group submission, anti-introception, superstition and stereotype objectivity and defensivity, sex, power, and strength. Many of these traits have descended into redundancy, but the general vibe proposed is a frightened personality with a rigid, hierarchical mind, a swift, predetermined, tight fist. Such an attitude is thought to emerge in childhood. Despite its influence in understanding authoritarianism, Adorno's F-scale was heavily criticised at the time of publication, and has been abandoned by modern science due to its anachronism. We now measure such a personality by other means, such as the before-mentioned Costa and McCree Big Five, with political researchers moving in favour of Alzheimer's right-wing paradigm for measuring authoritarian personalities. The main criticism of trait and type theorizing is that it is, ultimately, another method of stereotyping individuals for clarification. This then leaves the gate open for potential later prejudice and discrimination, this time perhaps backed with irrefutable evidence. It doesn't just emphasise the similarities present in us all, but highlights explicitly the differences. To be discriminated against is an awful thing, whether it be for your skin colour, sexual preferences, identity, promiscuity, or tastes and values. The ensuing issues with self-esteem and worth, stress, anxiety and depression can affect the individual in sometimes unprecedented ways, such as underperformance, physio-psychological problems, an inflated predisposition towards drug use, and adherence to that self-fulfilling prophecy mentioned in the previous video. Even some alleged paedophiles and rapists must feel a degree of discomfort when the prejudices held by others, regardless of moral substance, turn eyes of hate against them. But then isn't it suffice to say that our founded prejudices can sometimes in ways establish and retain a harmony of sorts? The machine of society is a breathing creature, kept alive and healthy through the people within its belly, and the maintenance of each limb. To that end, the individual regarded with prejudice feels not like a necessary component of society, but unnecessary detriment to the entire body. So say those surrounding. If founded and harmonious prejudice is similar to eradicating a varicose ulcer upon the body, then misguided prejudice is akin to hacking off a toe which had been bluing from slight cold. Neither the bodiless toe nor toeless foot benefits, and therefore not the body either. Therefore, in such a case, the sickness must stem from the societal brain, or rather, the confused cognitions prominent within that brain, a metaphysical organ, reflective of the brains of the many, an open source, public consciousness of sorts. In 2007, Ji Yong-jong, a Korean researcher investigating connections between mood and contentment, released results of a study on the correlation between life satisfaction and positive thinking. Jung and his colleagues found compelling evidence towards the new thought law of attraction, a universal law or pseudoscientific collection of generalizations, depending on how you see it, firmly propounding that we as individuals construct our own realities through predisposed feelings and desires. One could say that this so-called law is mirrored in our cognition, with cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive affirmation training, which consists of creating repetitive thoughts to adjust reality, exemplifying our capacity to shape reality with our thoughts. Followers of the spiritual capacity of the New Thought movement, which was established in the 19th century, firmly believe in the human ability to manipulate mental imagery, creatively visualizing via the stimulation of visual perception, with the intent to experience an effect or enhancement. Regardless of your stance toward New Thought, with its spiritual origins and mystic considerations for the nature of human reality, it is near undeniable that a believer will likely experience results from their creative visualization, whether that be due to ignorance, a self-instilled self-fulfilling prophecy, happenstance and working superstition, a positive predisposition, or simply placebo, which just brings us back to Pygmalion, golems, prophecies, and snakes once more. I hope throughout these two videos you've seen a sort of ping-pong effect, a symbiotic mirroring between the self and society, the individual and the culture that the individual lives in, the nature and the nurture of it all. I guess with a wiser consideration for the differences in others there can come a fairer and happier society, which can breed a contenter and more healthier individual, which is considerate of the differences in others. An incessant relay, a loop, a mirror effect, needn't be negative. Those snakes play with one another, but they need not grow thin, withering in a spiral. They can slither forwards together as one stronger and evolved unit, like the individual threads of a taut rope. If I am due to you, it's fair not vain to subsequently suggest that you are due to me, that society is due to us, as we are due to its nature and nurture. Thank you very much. Hi everyone, thank you very much for watching this video. This has been the part 2 in my Manifested Fancy mini-series, part of my big series essay collection that make no sense. What I'm trying to say is this collection of essays I call Youdentity, I suppose, and these two parts have been chapters titled Manifested Fancy. They deal with how the world is in our imagination. Sounds like common sense, but, you know, a lot of people don't get it, I guess. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video and want to see the next part in Youdentity, make sure to subscribe, because I like seeing the number go up. Yeah? Alright. Bye.